Hello everyone! The StarScope channel is here with you again. Today we decided to visit our beloved friends and see what celebrities have visited here before us. So, make yourself comfortable and let's go! Arguably the most memorable of the Friends guest stars, Robin Williams and Billy Crystal famously improvised their entire scene on the show. Williams played a character convinced his wife was cheating, and he was right. She was cheating with Crystal's character. The scene was only a few minutes long, but it was certainly dramatic. Jon Favreau was a bit more than just a guest star, but also couldn't be left out. He appeared in 6 episodes as Pete Becker, the billionaire tech inventor Monica dates, until he decides to pursue ultimate fighting. Rachel didn't date many people on Friends besides Ross, but she did date Ben Stiller for an episode. Ross pretty well hated any man who even said Rachel's name, let alone went out on a date with her, but he at least had a real reason to be skeptical of Stiller's character, Tommy, since he would regularly yell at people and animals for no reason. You might not recognize her at first, simply because she was so young at the time, but yes, Mae Whitman did guest star on Friends as a child. She played Sarah, the brown bird scout that Ross accidentally knocked over and broke her leg. Friends even drew famous international faces to their set when Isabella Rossellini appeared as herself in one episode. She was on Ross, David Schwimmer list, but not the final version. And that didn't sit too well with her. Okay, technically Giovanni Ribisi is a little more than a guest star, but we couldn't not include him. He played Phoebe's little brother Frank Jr. throughout the series. But he actually appeared as an unnamed character in an episode before Phoebe even learned she had a brother. Shortly after we properly met Frank Jr., we met his former home economics teacher, who became his wife, Alice. She popped up in a handful of episodes, and was played by Deborah Jo Rupp, best known for her role as Kitty on That 70s Show. Charlie Sheen was also among the early season's guest stars, appearing in season 2 as a sailor named Ryan. He and Phoebe had a relationship, but sadly, she caught chickenpox just before he was scheduled to resurface. It didn't matter to Ryan though, and what followed was a bunch of very itchy dates. Also working on that movie was an old schoolmate of Chandler's, played by none other than Julia Roberts. Of course, she had a pretty massive grudge against him and got even by tricking him into dating her, then stranding him in the bathroom of a restaurant wearing women's underwear. For a time, Courtney Cox was actually Courtney Cox Arquette. She was married to David Arquette, who guest starred on the show the same year Scream came out. That set, of course, is where the two met. On Friends though, Arquette played an ex-boyfriend of Ursula, who unwittingly begins stalking Phoebe, mistaking her for her sister. Jean-Claude Van Damme was one of the few Friends guest stars who actually played himself on the show. He showed up as the star of a movie in which Marcel the monkey earned a role, and even caused a pretty big fight between Monica and Rachel. When Monica and Chandler realize they can't have kids, they turn to the option of sperm donors. Of course, they prefer someone they know, so they interview Chandler's co-worker, Zach. John Stamos took on that role. Once again, she veers dangerously close to the recurring category, but we're including Tyler here. She played Charlie, a fellow paleontologist who dates Joey, then Ross, before eventually going back to her ex. That ex Charlie goes back to, of course, is Greg Kinnear. He played Benjamin Hobart, a literal genius who broke up with Charlie months prior. Upon seeing her again, he immediately tries sabotaging her relationship with Ross. Jennifer Coolidge's episode may be one of the most pleasantly surprising, in terms of guest stars. She plays Amanda, an old friend of Phoebe and Monica, who they desperately try to phase out of their lives. Eventually, Monica and Chandler decide to adopt. They're chosen by a young mother in Ohio, who's played by Anna Faris. This was after her breakout success in Scary Movie. When it comes to the were they on break argument about Ross and Rachel, Hugh Laurie's character came down firmly on the side of yes. He appeared on the show as an irate plane passenger who wound up sitting next to Rachel as she flew to London to stop Ross' wedding. You might not remember Joey's hand twin off the top of your head, but you certainly know his face. He was played by Thomas Lennon, who would go on to become one of the most prolific comedy actors today. Dakota Fanning. She played a little girl who was moving out of the house that Chandler and Monica were moving into, and struck up a fast friendship with Joey over their bitterness about it. Charlton Heston was another legacy name scored by Friends. He appeared as himself and gave Joey some advice while starring in a movie together. One of the most famous models of all time, Elle Macpherson, did spend some time on Friends. She appeared in a handful of episodes as Janine, Joey's roommate turned girlfriend turned ex. The relationship was sadly doomed when she made it clear she didn't like Joey's friends. Before Lisa Kudrow was on Friends, she starred on NBC's short-lived Mad About You as Ursula Buffy, who would of course go on to be explained in universe as Phoebe's twin sister. As a nod to the network's other sitcom, Mad About You stars Helen Hunt and Layla Kenzel pop into Central Perk on one episode of Friends. If you pay close attention, you'll notice John Lovitz shows up twice on Friends, and as the same character both times. He plays Steve, a restaurateur friend of Phoebe's in his first appearance. In his second, several seasons later, his life appears to have fallen apart, which he explains in great detail to Rachel on a date Phoebe set up. You've seen Missy Pyle in a lot of famous projects over the years, from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory to Percy Jackson and more, but among the first was Friends. She guest starred as a woman who goes on a date with Ross, only to be frightened by his overly whitened teeth. For a time, Rachel worked for Ralph Lauren on Friends. And yes, he did eventually show up. He had less than 5 lines, but he was there, and he played himself. Shortly after Ben Stiller guest starred on Friends, his future wife did the same. Christine Taylor played Bonnie, a friend of Phoebe's who used to, very important to remember, used to shave her head. She dates Ross very briefly, until Rachel steals him back. Michael Rappaport snagged his own arc on Friends as well, appearing as Gary the policeman. After Phoebe finds his badge at Central Perk and uses it to do good, the two begin dating. But it ends quickly after he shoots a bird chirping too loudly while in Phoebe's presence. Before she was solving crimes on Criminal Minds, Paget Brewster was a recurring star on Friends. She played Kathy, who originally started as Joey's girlfriend, before realizing she was more compatible with Chandler. Danny DeVito not only guest starred on Friends, but guest starred as an aging stripper. It's a true highlight of the series. You may not remember her episode right away, but Brooke Shields was indeed a guest star on Friends. She played Joey's, Matt LeBlanc, unhinged stalker Erica, who thought Days of Our Lives was actually real. At least she got to lick his hand. Mad About You wasn't the only NBC show that Friends crossed over with. They also welcomed ER stars George Clooney and Noah Weil for 2 episodes, as hunky doctors who Rachel and Monica, Courtney Cox, attempt to date. David Arquette was the first, but not the only famous face that Ursula Buffy dated. She also dated Eric, who was played by Sean Penn. Brad Pitt is, of course, one of the most famous guest stars Friends ever had, and one of the most memorable. He played Will, an old high school friend of Ross and Monica. Naturally, he hated Rachel. Phoebe was always the show weirdo, but even she couldn't handle the strangeness of Parker. Endlessly optimistic, and always very chatty, that particular love interest was played by none other than Alec Baldwin. Matthew Perry wasn't the only Friends star who got famous stars for parents. Courtney Cox, of course, had Elliot Gould as her dad, but Jennifer Aniston had Marlo Thomas playing her mother. We're including her here because she was really only in a few episodes. Hank Azaria also toes the line of the meaning of guest star, but David is too unforgettable. He was Phoebe's first real love, and nearly got her in the end. Paul Rudd is just too charming to stand against, man. It seems inevitable that Rachel's second sister would be another famous surprise. And indeed, Amy was played by Christina Applegate. One of Ross' more toxic traits, and there were plenty, was that he was severely uncomfortable with the idea of a man working as a nanny. So, he sadly fired Sandy, who was played by Freddie Prinze Jr. While stuck in Tulsa, Oklahoma for Christmas, Chandler is stranded at the office with one of his co-workers, played by none other than Selma Blair. Monica is pretty worried about this, and with fair reason. Wendy does try to get Chandler to cheat, but she's unsuccessful. Dermot Mulroney guest starred as another co-worker on Friends, but this one being for Rachel. He played Gavin, who took over Rachel's position while she was on maternity leave. The two have a brief fling, but it's short-lived, thanks to the Ross of it all. Technically, Alex Borstein probably wasn't considered a guest star when she appeared on Friends, but given where she is now, we're counting her. She played the actress at the center of the one-woman show Chandler gets trapped into seeing when his friends forget to tell him about Joey's soap opera roof party. One of the first famous faces to show up on Friends was soap star Morgan Fairchild. She appears in a handful of episodes as Chandler's mother. He wasn't credited for it, but Jay Leno did make a guest appearance in Friends. It came with the introduction of Morgan Fairchild as Chandler's mom. She was a famous romance author on the show, so Leno interviewed Nora Tyler Bing. And no, they didn't just use recycled footage. Kathleen Turner was cast to portray Chandler's trans father for the series, only popping up in a small number of episodes. Friends co-creator Marta Kaufman has since acknowledged that the show shouldn't have misgendered the character in its run. If you find yourself rewatching Friends and going, "Oh my God, is that Gary Oldman?" The answer is yes. Yes, it is. He appeared in 2 episodes as Joey's co-star who definitely lost his Oscar races. Though she was on an equally famous show of her own with Sex and the City, Kristen Davis did have some time for Friends. She appears in 1 episode as one of Joey's dates, but one he legitimately falls for, after some nudging. Sadly, the feeling wasn't mutual. Indeed, Bruce Willis is among those who stopped by Friends for a bit. He played the father of Elizabeth, the college student Ross began dating. He was a neat guy. In the hopes of making some extra money, Phoebe eventually starts working as a telemarketer. And, in her endeavors, she ends up calling an office supply manager named Earl, played by Jason Alexander. Unfortunately, he's not in a good place, mentally, when they cross paths, but she comes through for him. Ben Stiller and Christine Taylor weren't the only future couple who both guest starred on Friends. Years after Charlie Sheen appeared, Denise Richards guest starred as Cassie, a cousin of Ross and Monica's who Ross is very uncomfortably attracted to. Winona Ryder appeared in 1 episode of Friends as Melissa, an old sorority sister of Rachel's. Apparently, the two had a bit of a surprising romantic past, which Melissa clung to pretty fiercely. Gabrielle Union appeared on 1 episode in the 7th season of Friends, as a girl Joey and Ross both unknowingly start dating. Unfortunately, Union didn't have a good time on that set, and has talked about it in the years since. It's hard to take over anyone's role, but Susan Sarandon? Well, that's just impossible. Technically, Joey was just taking over Cecilia Monroe's role, but still, Monroe was played by Sarandon. The two do have a brief fling though. No one will ever forget the fact that Reese Witherspoon was on Friends, especially since she still knows her most famous line all these years later. She played Jill, one of Rachel's sisters. And these were all the famous guests who visited Friends. I encourage you to not forget to subscribe to our channel, press like, and share your insights in the comments. Thanks for watching and see you soon here on the StarScope channel.